Hey, good morning, world. This is part of what I meant to do yesterday, but my lives are not coming out like I'd like them to, and it's my fault. I own this shit. Right now, I'm looking at an article from ExxonMobil. Now, let me remind you who ExxonMobil is. Exxon is the largest oil exploration company in the world, not in this nation, in the world. They are helping Russia harvest North Sea oil fields. They are working with anybody that will pay them or that they can make money off of. Harvesting mined resources. ExxonMobil is a mining company at heart, harvesting minerals that this earth has in some abundance or in very little abundance. This is a large industry. In order for Exxon to produce their magic, they have to have the energy for that magical power plant or whatever plant to run. So they need agreements with local energy officials that they can get the electricity to run that facility. The facilities they're proposing are, here, let's just read this. The promise of carbon capture and storage and a Texas-sized call to action. This is from their energyfactor.exxonmobil.com website. Now, ExxonMobil believes, and experts agree, that carbon capture and storage will need to play a critical role if the United States and other countries are to meet the emissions reduction goals outlined in the Paris Agreement. So what they're proposing is gigawatts of energy used to capture carbon from the atmosphere that we placed there. And their plan is printed so far, says they're going to use offshore carbon storage somethings. Offshore deep well sequestration. Now, we've done this onshore. We do the sequestration inside of salt domes. We mine salt domes out of the earth, and then we put chemicals in those salt domes to store them. Because of the stability of the salt dome, if there's no water in the chemicals, makes those reasonable storage facilities. There are massive underground liquid gas storage facilities across the nation. This is part of a huge planned system of pipes across America, of which ExxonMobil is a part. So, let's go on here with this article. CCS could enable the United States to safely capture and store hundreds of millions of metric tons. The question is, how can CCS be deployed broadly to help U.S. reduce emissions more quickly? This isn't reducing emissions, it's capturing emissions. Stopping those emissions to begin with would probably be a better idea. Steps towards that were things like solar power on rooftops and reasonable management of the deployment of solar energy we could have done decades ago. Yet it was fought and argued with and cried about and whined about. We know it works. We can prove it works. We can prove the cost compared to building a nuclear reactor. But that solar has to be engineered into a reasonable solution, a workable solution. It means that the energy provided to the grid has to be understood from those solar rooftops. It has to be managed and maintained. And when that rooftop solar doesn't work, that house is going to expect electricity or a backup source. Maybe they can afford their own generator, but the generator is going to run out of gas or electricity or propane or whatever you wish to run it off of. The most I could get out of my survival setup when I used to play that game was a 6 to 8 month run of my propane tank before it had to be refilled because of harsh winters, because there wasn't enough wood around to try and run a house on wood, because every other house in the neighborhood might have the same ideas, and forests do not last long. But hey, Exxon Production Research, Exxon. I happened to work for them when they were studying groundwater, contractor, few days in a facility studying the aquifers of the Americas, North and South America, how much water is under our ground, how much is polluted already, where it's going. This is Exxon. This is what they knew. This carbon capture, if it had been, this is not new. This is old, old stuff. Generations old, we understood CO2, how to use it and where it goes. I mentioned in another video about syngas generators. Now, those don't matter to anybody but somebody working in a chemical plant around a syngas generator. For the past 3 years, wow, 3 years, wow, a whole 3 years, ExxonMobil has been assessing the concept of multi-user CCS hubs. What it means is they're doing a financial study to figure out how much money they can make. This is materials harvesting. Besides the CO2 in the air that they're going to be capturing, there are a number of other items of interest in the air. Some they could harvest and make money off of. There is a potential for that. At one point in our industry for World War II, we removed, go look at how much magnesium is in the Gulf seawater, and realized we harvested tons and tons of titanium from seawater for World War II. Circulating Gulf water in the thousands and millions of gallons a day, and pulling parts per billion of magnesium out of that water using electrolysis techniques, scraping the anodes off and recovering magnesium and other materials that are in seawater. The federal government paid for that. It was research, it was war materials, it was necessary. So 3 years, ExxonMobil has been studying a decadal-old issue and problem that they have known about. These things should have been made decades ago and attached to those coal-fired power plants to clean up their emissions until we discovered something better. But instead of doing that, they bought politicians. They made a wall of millionaires wanting to be billionaires between them and reasonable discourse. This is Exxon's work. This is politics 501. Paying legislatures massive amounts of money. Look at Ohio. Look at the nuclear industry's grift in Ohio. It's not hard to find. And it's a discouraging look at decades of gerrymandering and manipulation of politics, instead of educating people on the risks of nuclear waste, escaping nuclear waste, hazardous waste, the fumes, the air, the liquids, the waters. We understand how this works. We can't afford to pay attention to it, I suppose. ExxonMobil believes the United States could establish an innovation zone. Should have been done decades ago. Instead of buying politics, you big idea, big benefits. I'm not going to read this crap. And nothing in here is new. This is not something we haven't done decades ago. It's just the federal government didn't make it worth enough money for these bastards to do any more than pay lip service and steal the nation's public education system. They helped. Well, hey, the role of policy. We applaud President Biden's decision to rejoin the Paris Agreement because all our butt congressmen will make sure that we can make $1 or $2 off of this. And we'll buy more middlemen. We'll create more millionaires, more vulture capitalists, more limited liability corporations to hide our liability. Looking ahead, looking ahead. They want federal dollars. That's how far ahead they're looking. Tags for that are CCS, climate change, Houston CCS hub, latest news, Paris Agreement, reducing emissions. These people are professionals at playing us. As an engineer, I'm insulted. As a human, I'm just annoyed, frustrated. pissed off. How did we get here? How are there not more people speaking to the truths of the science of engineering and where exactly we are? Look at the ads that you're seeing now in the YouTube world. And I don't do much other sports out there, so I don't know what Facebooks might be pushing at you, but nuclear level misinformation. Things learned from the Cold War about how to manipulate civilization itself. It takes money, and it takes time, and time is money. Vote anyway. I hope a whole new generations of politicians are getting ready to get involved. I hope. Peace is out. We can do much better.